Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum students. This is your computer class and I hope that everyone is safe and sound at your place. Students, today we are going to discuss about what are DBMS keys. In the previous lesson, we discussed that in DBMS we have to create a tables, and in tables we have to store our data in a sequenced form. Okay, so today we have to discuss about different kinds of the keys and the purpose of that keys, why we need to use these different keys in DBMS tables. Okay, so let's start. First of all, we are going to discuss about what are DBMS keys. So DBMS key is an attribute or set of attributes of a relation. Attributes are basically the properties of a particular relation. For example, if I am talking about a person, the record of a person, like any person, then person name, its ID, its roll number, its address, its contact number, we can say that all these are basically the properties or attributes of that particular person or student. Okay, so the purpose of using the DBMS keys is basically used for uniquely identification of a relation. It is also used for establishing the relationships between different relations, and it is used for quickly accessing particular records for the relation. If somebody wants to access the record of a particular person, then they can easily access it. Why? Because it is uniquely identified and it is in the sequenced form. Okay, so for storing or sorting record of a relation based on the data of one or more columns, we have different kinds of the keys like primary key, secondary key, candidate key, alternate key, composite, sort, and foreign key. Today we are going to discuss about the first three keys like primary, secondary, and candidate key. What are the differences between these keys and what are the basic usage of these keys? So let's start. The first one is primary key. Primary key is basically an attribute or set of attributes that uniquely identify each record in a table. We can say that it is known as the primary key. In a relational database, each relation must have a primary key. So this is a very important point here, that in a relational database table, or in a relation, if you are saying about in a table, then each table must have consist only one primary key. So a primary key is necessary in a relational database table. So an attribute of a relation is selected as primary key when its value for each record must be unique. For example, if you are talking about an employee table of an organization, then that has different attributes. What kind of the attributes it could contain, like employee ID, employee name, employee date of birth, and further employee address, employee contact number. Suppose we have different kinds of the attributes of the employee, but we can say that the primary key is basically used to represent the uniquely identification of the table. Then we can say that the name could be repeated, so name is cannot be used as the uniquely identification of a person, because it is possible that two or more people can having the same name. Okay, like there are the different common names: Ali, Umar, Usman. So many of the students can have Ali name, Umar, and Usman. Okay, but the ID number are basically everyone have a different or unique identification, so the ID number could be unique. Date of birth could also be same. So in these attributes, we can say that the employee ID number can be represented as a uniquely identification of a table. So we can apply the primary key of that attribute that can be uniquely identify of a relation. So here in these attributes, we can say that the primary key could apply on employee ID. Why? Because employee ID is unique for everyone. So we can say that the employee ID, we can get record of any person with the help of the employee ID, and this is used for uniquely identification. Okay, so primary key is basically applied on employee ID. There are also many other things that we must have to keep in our mind for the primary key, like a relation can have only one primary key. Okay, a relation can have only one primary key. Students, over here we can say that if a relation can contain two or more different such a kind of the attributes, that can also be used as the uniquely identification. But what we have to do, we just have to select a one that particular attribute as a primary key. So a relation cannot have more than one primary key, it just consists on one primary key. Okay, we can apply, there can be many different attributes that can be used as primary key, but we have to apply only one primary key on a one attribute. Next, each value in primary key must be unique. Like if you are talking about the identification, employee ID, then obviously employee ID must be unique. It could not be same. Okay, like 1, 2, 3, 4 roll number likewise. Next one is a primary key cannot have a null value. A primary key must have contain a value, and the value must be a uniquely identification. Okay, a value must be a unique. It could not be seen. So these 3 points are very important to understand that what is about primary key. Next one is about candidate key. So students, a relation may have more than one attribute that can be used as the primary key, but as we know that we just have to select one attribute as a primary key. So what about the other attributes? So we can say that a relation that have more than one attribute as a primary key, and they can be used as primary key. So all set of attributes, that set of attributes that can be used as primary key is basically called a candidate key. Okay, it's basically called a candidate key. So let's take an example. Suppose student relation contain attributes roll number, NIC, registration number, address. Okay, so over here roll number, NIC is also the for unique identification, registration number is also. Or if over here we have a or different other attributes, then we can say that they can be used as primary key. So what we have to do, we can say these are all attributes could be called as candidate key. So right now roll number, NIC and registration number, because all these can be used for the uniquely identification, and but we just have to select one attribute as a primary key. So we can say that all these attributes can be considered like a candidate key. Okay, next one is basically about alternate key. So if one of the suitable candidate key is selected as primary key, then we can say that the other keys are known as candidate keys. Like over here, let's assume that NIC. If I am assuming that NIC is a primary key, okay, but we can also apply primary key on roll number, we can also apply a primary key on registration number. So we are also other two attributes that can be used as primary key, but we just have to, as we know that according to the rule of applying a primary key, that we just have to apply on one attribute, but we have right now 3 different attributes that can be used as primary key. So there are the number of attributes that can be used as primary key. We have to consider all these number of attributes as a candidate key. But now if I am applying a primary key on this NIC attribute, then I can say that what about the other one attributes? The other one could be called as alternate keys. Okay, so right now over here roll number and registration number could be considered like a alternate key. Okay, and NIC could be considered like a primary key. Is that clear? So this is the basic difference of these 3 important keys. Students, what you have to do, you have to learn the definitions of these 3 keys, and you have to create a table of a student table, and in student table you have to mention all the important or all the basic attributes of the table, and you have to apply the primary key on it. You have to apply the candidate, you have to mention that what are the candidates, alternate and primary key is there in that particular table. Okay, still if you have any confusion you can ask from me. Allah Hafiz.